Hello. If you or someone you know and love suffers from a slow learning disability, you deserve to hear the story of this patient of mine right here. This is Johnny. My name is Dr. Lonnie Herman. Johnny is going to report to you in just a few seconds here. He's going to report to you of how much better his brain is doing and how much better his life is since we've been able to get rid of the hidden causes of his slow learning disability. Before I get into Johnny's video, I want to share with you, Johnny had failed 5th grade, he failed the 6th grade, he failed the 9th grade 4 times. Very frustrated in life, Johnny could not even hold a job for more than 4 months. Fatigue, brain fog, math was very difficult for him. Now he's doing so much better. In a moment, we're going to take a break and listen to just some highlights of Johnny's amazing testimonial that he'll share with you. At the end of this video, you're going to hear more of his discussion. And just before the end of this video, I'm going to share with you a free offer that I think you would love to take advantage of. So let's stay tuned and let's listen to what Johnny has to say, some highlights, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to share with you what I found with him that other doctors did not find with him that caused his whole learning disorder, caused his brain fog, caused his memory problem, his word finding problem, and pains he had in his body, his fatigue. I'm going to tell you what I found with him that I treated with him in order to get him better. So let's listen to what he has to say and be back in just a moment.
When I was in high school, I repeated the 9th grade 4 years in a row.
4 times.
Before, I wasn't able to keep a job. I've been on my job almost 3 years now. Before I saw you, to me, like 4 months in a job was like the most that I can sustain a job. It was hard for me to focus. I was always lethargic. Everybody was fast paced. I was always the one behind. I would be frustrated and lash out at people. I was just a lost person. Like, I was like, what am I doing here? I was just looking for answers. And thankfully, I came across to your videos. When I went to your treatment, I saw results instantly. That was like the best decision of my life. You really did help me and you helped me get rid of a lot of things that was wrong with me. I'm grateful for your help. I'm grateful to you and your staff.
Thank you.
Isn't it just incredible? Johnny's got a job for 3 years now, a government job that he's able to hold. He's supporting his family, which is amazing. If we go back to the day when I first met him, I'll tell you, he came to my clinic in Florida, which was back in 2016. Today is now October 18th of 2022. So we're talking more than 6 years ago is when I first met him. And he was looking for answers and he was struggling terribly. And I'll tell you, when he came in my clinic, I asked him, and you'll hear him say this at the end of the video when you hear our discussion that he and I had in that video, that Zoom video conference that you get to see his testimonial. I asked him, what are you going to do? What do you think you can achieve in life when your brain gets better? And he immediately, tears in his eyes, he started crying and he told me, don't ask me that question. I don't even think it's possible. It can't be. I've suffered for so many years, Dr. Herman. And he thought that that was just some gimmick I was trying with him. And he was already here ready to get started. He found me online, but he didn't believe that it could really ever be achieved, even though he had hopes that he could finally achieve a good functioning brain. Well, after 4 treatments with me, he is now back with his family up in New York. He's got a 3-year government job. He is doing great. I'll tell you his symptoms. He had a stabbing head pain. He told me it felt like his head was cracked open. He was in special ed classes since he was 12 years of age. Again, I said earlier, he failed the 5th grade. He failed 6th grade. He failed the 9th grade 4 times. He had a constant brain fog, constant chronic fatigue. He had knee pain in both knees. He was terrible with math. He could not hold a job for more than 4 months. He had a very hard time finding words to say. He's better now, but it was so terrible back then. It was a struggle for him. It was a struggle and a very low self-esteem. He felt unintelligent. He was constantly fighting with people because he couldn't understand what was going on or what he needed to do. He couldn't focus on anything except trying to find a way to figure this out for himself. The only thing that was helping him that he tried, psychiatrists didn't help him, other therapists didn't help him, other treatments that he tried didn't help him to get better. The only thing that was helping to reduce to some slight degree the brain fog that he had and the fatigue that he had was vegetable juicing. And that's what he lived on, vegetable juices. And he did that for a few years until he came to me and we started treatment together. I'll tell you what I found, and I'm just going to sum it up into a few different points here. He had chronic hidden infections in his brain and his body. He had certain toxins like mercury in the brain and in the body. I'll mention a couple of specific points in just a moment, but these different chronic hidden infections and toxins that were in his brain and in his body are what held his brain back from functioning as good as it is now. And it can get better. It can get better than where we helped him achieve about 5 or 6 years ago, but he's it's a whole nother world for him. So it all boils down to with slow learning disability disorders. It boils down to that there are hidden infections and toxins that get into the brain and get into parts of the body. Let's use an example before I tell you his exact specific findings. I'm going to use an example for you of a certain toxin that's common that I find in children and young adults and adults who have been living with a learning problem and who grew up with a learning problem, grew up with a focus problem, an attention deficit problem, even to the worst case end of the spectrum, like an autism type of problem or symptom or disorder. The brain can be holding a toxin from childbirth. And one toxin that's very common is from the epidural. The epidural injection, when the mother's going to give birth and they numb the mother's lower part of the body to do a C-section, for example, that epidural even if it was a natural birth, but they still gave her an epidural, that epidural chemical numbs the body of the mother. It can even paralyze the legs for a period of time. And that numbness, that agent, that xylocaine, I'll put the name of it up right here on the screen, the epidural xylocaine chemical that numbs the lower part of the body in the woman, it can easily go right through the umbilical cord into the baby, into the brain of the baby, and get stuck there. And the body is not strong enough. It's already overwhelmed with stresses, that baby's body, that it can't get the chemical out of the brain. So what happens when the epidural that numbs the mother's lower part of the body, that epidural that can cause paralysis of the legs for a short period of time until the numbness chemical wears off, that epidural gets stuck in, let's say, the frontal lobe of the child's brain. Cognitive function in the frontal lobe, personality, certain memory, speech in the frontal lobe, certain behaviors from the frontal lobe. Serotonin has to function in that part of the brain, so does other chemicals like dopamine, and there's others that need a healthy frontal lobe in order for them to, those chemicals to be able to help those parts of the brain function. When you have a numbness chemical that's deeply embedded in the frontal lobe can't do the job properly. Another part of the brain that the epidural I find get into is in the diencephalon of the brain. Diencephalon is a developmental part of the brain that exists since embryo stage. This diencephalon is part of the embryo that helps to create the whole brain and the whole body. When there's the epidural that can get into that diencephalon, even during the childbirth process, it wasn't there from the epidural stage, or maybe it was, but let's just say first child, only child in this mother's life. The epidural wasn't there from embryo development. It got there during the childbirth process. It can easily get deeply embedded in the diencephalon. It can go into the frontal lobe. It can go into the temporal lobe where memory is also located, the hippocampus of the brain where memory is located. Children can have major problems, deficits in remembering, in retaining information, in recalling information. But the epidural can also exist. Let's say the mother had her third child without an epidural, but child number 1 and number 2, she did receive an epidural to give birth to the first and second child. The epidural can stay in her bloodstream, can stay in the uterus even. Embed in there like an ink from a tattoo in the skin. It never leaves the body. It might fade a little bit, but that ink still is in the skin 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years from now. Well, the epidural chemical, like the ink, so to speak, can go into the uterus and stay there. And when she gets pregnant for the third time, it can be released into the newly forming baby. And she doesn't get the epidural for the third birth. but it can be in that third child's brain. And that third child can have the worst. Even the first and second might be okay, seemingly be okay, but the third child has a learning disorder. It can be from the epidural that got in there because it was still in the uterus that got into the child's brain. Other things that I find are the anesthesia chemicals used in a mother's mouth when they numb a tooth to pull a tooth or do a root canal or do a filling or so on. That even prior to or during the birth or the pregnancy period, the 9-month period of the woman being pregnant with that child, the new baby that's coming out of the mother. The numbing chemical from the mouth can and does easily travel away from the mouth into the brain and into the body of the mother, and it can easily go right through the bloodstream into the newly forming embryo, fetus, baby. Baby can be born with the numbing chemical in the brain. The mercury from the mother's mouth, from a so-called silver-colored filling, can easily migrate through the blood into the forming brain of the baby. And then when the baby comes out, it's possible that there are some stressful effects in the brain from vaccines. It is proven that the mother's milk, even if there's breastfeeding, the mother's milk may be carrying some kind of fungus or mold toxin or vaccine chemical. There's a lot of things that could be in the mother's breast milk, and the breast milk may be, well, we think healthier for the baby than a formula. But what if there's a chemical and or infection or multiple chemicals and infections that are in the breast milk that get into the baby's brain and change the baby's brain's ability to develop properly? Maybe crawling doesn't happen so early the way it's supposed to. Maybe walking is a very big, difficult problem. Maybe they have fainting problems. Maybe they don't have any of those problems. They develop just great, yet once they get into school, then they have to try to retain information and repeat that information to pass a test, to do a book report, to have conversation with people, and they're just lost and it doesn't work right. We've got to think of the chemicals that can invade the brain and change the brain's ability to function properly. And the other topic is chronic kidney infections. If the mother has a candida problem, I'm not blaming the mother. This is just a fact of life. Is that what if the mother has a candida in the uterus? It can easily get into the forming baby, the embryo and the fetus and the baby. It can be in that baby's brain, the candida, and cause an impairment in the child's ability to retain information and learn properly, causing dyslexia or causing an inability to just remember information. Maybe they can read properly, but they just can't remember what they just read. What if the mother had at some point, and or the father, it takes two to make a baby, right? So what if there's a measles virus or an Epstein-Barr virus or an influenza virus that's in the parent, can easily get into the baby. The baby's brain is forming with the influenza virus or the Epstein-Barr virus, for example. 35% of our genes are viral, by the way. So we can have a virus that's part of a cell or a series of cells in a part of the brain. Let's say the Epstein-Barr virus you were born with, and it was triggered by a head trauma or by a vaccine which stressed the body, or by even electromagnetic field stresses from the use of a cell phone or of a computer or a video game system can actually start to stress the brain and stress the infection, make the infection more dominant in the brain and impair the brain's ability to function properly. And the child does not have to have a fever, does not have to have a rash, does not have to be coughing, doesn't have to be vomiting. There can be an infection in the brain, whether it's viral, mold, fungus, bacteria, or parasitic, and or it can be multiple different types of parasites, multiple different types of bacteria and parasites, multiple different types of molds and bacteria and parasites. It could be a combination with fungal infections as well as viral infections and toxins that have gotten into the child's brain and the body that are impairing that brain from developing properly to carry out normal function that we expect from a human being. So with that said, these are the things I found in Johnny's brain and body, and I'll get to those findings in just a moment. How do I know this? My name is Dr. Lonnie Herman, and after I had become a chiropractor, I realized that wasn't the full answer to treat people with different conditions and help people get better. I went back to school for postgraduate studies in functional neurology, neurochemistry, neuroimmunology, endocrinology, thyroid disease, gastrointestinal disease, blood chemistry analysis, nutrition causing or lack of proper nutrition causing disorders in the body, alternative cancer types of treatments, and understanding from the body from a whole different perspective. I got into studies deep about biochemistry. I taught organic chemistry for almost 4 years in school. I actually also studied very deep into dental work and the connection of teeth and disease in the body. I took developmental disorder programs in the neurology postgraduate studies, human brain dissection, movement disorders, and the whole Parkinson's range of types of disease in the body. And one common theme stuck out in my mind is that in the immunology program, the immunologist had taught us and showed us dozens of research papers around the world that were not funded by drug companies, where the drug was the answer. These scientists had found that it was different deeply embedded germs, viruses, parasites, fungus, mold, bacteria that were causing disease of the body, whether it was a thyroid disease or lupus or MS, rheumatoid arthritis, or it was causing a cardiovascular disease, causing diabetes, causing a brain development problem. And chemicals can cause the same problems too. So they were finding mercury toxicity in the body and arsenic and lead. And there's pesticides. There's so many different toxins that get into the body and can get into the brain and cause the brain a disorder. So I went on my journey to figure out how to find these different toxins and chemicals, because I also had gotten into the functional medicine aspect for a while, and that was still leaving too many questions unanswered. And the work that I'm doing now, which you can learn more about on my website, as we near the end of the video, I'm going to make a free offer for you. You'll learn a lot more there as well. Okay? So let me tell you what I found with Johnny first that helped him overcome so much of his memory and fatigue and pain problem. And he doesn't have the stabbing head pain anymore. And he still has a little bit of word finding problem, a little difficulty, but it's nothing compared to what it was at all. And he says in the video he should continue with me, yet going back 6 years ago and 5 years ago compared to now, it's a let's say light years ahead of where I was back then treating a person and figuring it out so much better now than it was then. Yet what we were able to do for him then is just incredible. And again, the video that he's talking about or the testimonial video, even more than 5 years after I saw him, he's still doing wonderful. There was no regression. There was no reversal of the problem. And there's been no treatment. There's no supplements. There's nothing else that we had to provide him to keep him at the level where he is now, which is, again, if you will say light years, if you could just say he's like 70, 80% better than where he was when I first met him. Now, I found his brain was infected with the Bartonella bacteria. I found he had Lyme disease infection in the brain. No labs were used with this. There's a certain specific, unique kind of examination method that I perform here. I found that he had mercury toxicity in his brain. He had pesticide chemicals and weed killer spray affecting his brain. He had some antibiotic residues from previous use of antibiotics when he was a child in the brain, affecting the brain. These different infections and chemicals were not letting the brain function properly. The cerebrospinal fluid I found, he had the Epstein-Barr virus. I found his stem cells in the bone marrow from the skull down to the body, the stem cells that make the blood, these stem cells that make the blood were also infected with Lyme disease infection. His stomach infected with the scabies itch mite organism. Hey, the stomach can be infected, and when it is, it can change brain function. You can have a cloudy, foggy brain because of a stomach infection and have no stomach pain. His frontal lobe of his brain, the frontal lobe is important because the frontal lobe helps us to interact with people. It's all cognitive function there. The frontal lobe is also part of speech. I shouldn't say part, it's frontal lobe is how we say the word, Broca's speech area. We have another part of the brain called the Wernicke's area. Wernicke's speech area is where we find the word. It's in the temporal lobe. But his frontal lobe was loaded with mold. I found black mold affecting it. I found multiple mycotoxins or mold toxins affecting the frontal lobe of his brain. In the prefrontal part of the brain, I also found a large amount of dental mercury. When he was a baby, or at least a young child, one of his baby teeth was filled with one of those silver-colored or so-called mercury fillings. And there is a lot of proof, maybe you're not going to find this from the American Dental Association, but there is a lot of proof that the mercury in a tooth can easily, within days or weeks, spread to the brain, gets in the bloodstream, can go to the kidney, can go to the bone, can go to the lymph, does go to these areas of the brain and the body and cause toxic overload to those parts of the brain and the body, and can lead to terrible malfunction of the areas of the brain and the body where the mercury has now become deeply embedded in. There was a study to prove the point of what happened in an area of Japan called Minamata disease in Minamata, Japan. And Minamata disease, what they found is people, fishermen and women in this village right on the water, they found that all of a sudden these people started developing and living with and exhibiting seizure-like disorders and Parkinson's type of disorders. And they found eventually through studies of the food they were eating, the fish were loaded with mercury. They found it was mercury toxicity, mercury poisoning that happened in the fish that these people were eating. They found it because a fertilizer production company that was right there on the other side of the water where this fisher person village was, the fertilizer company, its excessive waste was mercury from creating the fertilizer. The mercury was dumped in the water. The fish absorbed the mercury. The people ate the fish. The mercury poisoned the brain, and they had seizure and movement disorders. So there's a lot of proof. There's more studies I can give about how mercury and other toxins and various kinds can change brain function. But the point is with Johnny, he's very happy that he came here. I'm happy to be the person, the doctor who helped him get his brain better than it ever was in life. He, again, a job in government for 3 years. He's able to support his family, which is wonderful. I saw him 4 times from November of 2016 through July of 2017. And for him, his struggle is over. Could we get a little better than where he is now? Absolutely, if he does take the opportunity to come down here to my clinic. But again, he's about 70, 80% better than where he was. And you'll hear when you listen to the rest of the video how grateful he is for this work. So the free offer I'd like to make for you is, if you go onto my website, we'll put the address down here on this video. You go onto my website, there's a free copy for you. You can download your free copy of my ebook. The ebook is about 40 pages in length. It's about how you can reverse supposedly incurable diseases with a quantum energized medicine. The page, again, it's about 40 pages. There's a lot of big font, a lot of big pictures. It might take you about an hour to read. And in my book, there are different links that you can click on, which will take you to different pages within my website. One of those links is about food sensitivities or food allergies and how they can provoke stress in the brain and the body, whether it's causing a rash or causing a pain or causing a brain fog or a fatigue. But it's not caused by the food. It's caused by infections in the brain and the body that are exacerbated or stressed or fueled by certain foods, whether it's gluten or whether it's dairy. Let me make one other point, is when I started working with Asperger's and various ranges of autism, one of the things I remember hearing early on, we're going back probably about 10 years ago, is that parents would tell me, my child is not going to follow a gluten-free diet. My child is not going to follow a dairy-free diet. My child is not going to, I can't get them to stop having sugar. And it was impossible because the children would become very, let's just say, demanding. I won't go any further than that. They can even be very violent with the parent. So I had to find another way of we can't change that person. If gluten really was the big problem causing the stress in the brain, if dairy was the problem causing stress in the brain, and it was causing stress because the infection hidden in the brain that we had to get out of the brain to make the brain rebound and function better, because when you get rid of the hidden cause, the brain can function better. But we couldn't get them off of dairy or gluten because all they would eat was macaroni and cheese, for example, and all they would have for breakfast, they only wanted they wanted a grilled cheese sandwich, and that's all that they would eat. There was no way around it because the children they're very demanding, and the parent had to do what the child said because the child would get out of control. I saw parents come in here with scratches on them and bite marks on them, and what are they going to do? So they gave the child what the child wanted. And so what I found is that when we were able to get rid of the infections that were connected to the food sensitivity or food allergy and the craving for the food, we got rid of the infection because the organism that was in the brain driving the brain to act and be in that behavior and that pattern, the organism was actually craving the cheese and craving the bread or craving the macaroni and cheese or the grilled cheese sandwich. It was craving the sugar, the parasites, the molds, the candida, the viruses were craving the sugar. They were driving the child's brain to now want that food. So when we're able to start working in a very precise manner, with specific customized protocols to help the body safely, effectively rid those or neutralize those or those organisms or those infections, the viruses or the parasites or the mold or the whatever in the brain and or the body, the child was able to start behaving better. The child was able to start interacting with other kids or parents without being violent. The child was able to start retaining information. The anxiety would go away, the depression would go away, the crying would go away, the insomnia would disappear, and also the craving for those specific foods like macaroni and cheese only all day, that would disappear as well. Whether it took 1 visit or 2 or 3 treatments, the job was getting done and the job did get done. So again, back to my book, your copy of my free ebook about how you can reverse chronic disease that's they call incurable. Food, there's one link to a food page. Go there, click on it, learn more about my work. I only share part of the exam that I'm doing in there. There's a lot deeper work that I do in this exam in person than what I'm sharing on that website. There's also a dental page. There are people, adults, young adults, who've had root canals, who've had mercury fillings, who had teeth pulled, who had a broken tooth, who had an abscess in the mouth. So click on this link for the dental page, and you're going to see a lot of different examples of how dental work was related to certain diseases in people, and it's pretty incredible there. So click on that, click on the pictures, click on the videos. Not too much time for you to spend on there, but you're going to have a much deeper insight, easy to understand deeper insight of the connection of teeth and disease to the brain and the body. And then at the very end of my book, you click on a link on the last page. It'll take you to a 42-minute video where I go through a much deeper discussion about my journey as a physician to become the person, the physician who cares for you, who can help you get better or your loved one get better. As well as I talk a bit about highlights about the type of method, the type of science, the type of work that I'm using and doing for people. And it gives you a brief insight to that so you're a little more aware of what we're doing. I believe, and I know because I tried in the past, exercising the brain with some therapies to try to, let's say, like a metronome with the brain, or having a child try to memorize things better and keep repeating off of flashcards, or doing light therapies or sound therapies. And there's many others that I tried that I was instructed to try through these different courses that I took about brain development in school. I'll tell you, there is nothing finer than finding the particular infection and or chemical that got into the child's brain and providing a safe and effective remedy to get that aggravating infection and or toxin out of that brain of that child, and just see slowly or quickly see the brain evolve and just get better. There was one child, I'll make my last note and then I'm going to say goodbye here. Mother brings her child to me, young girl, 18 months old. She brought her here back when she was about 6 months old. They come from Louisiana to my clinic in South Florida. She had a rash on her face and on her chest. 2 treatments, the rash is gone. About a year later, we get a call from the mother. She's very stressed. She hasn't slept in a month. The mother was telling me that the daughter all of a sudden acted like she had autism. She was constantly banging her head, pulling her hair, would not let anybody near her except her mother, who was anxious, clinging to the mother. She went from being friendly, giggly, smiling, to everybody else around her, besides her mother, she was screaming at them. And so I'm very clingy to the mother. I found that in my history taking, when she came back for that visit when she was 18 months old, but the daughter was 18 months old, I found in my history taking the little girl was acting normal up until she had an ear infection. She had a fever. Mother brought her to the emergency room. The doctors gave her an antibiotic, broke the fever, stopped the ear infection symptom. But the next day, the whole autistic type of behavior started. The behavior disorder started, banging her head, pulling her hair, screaming. The father couldn't even go near her, clinging to the mother, anxious. Right here in my clinic, we found that that particular antibiotic was in the frontal lobe of the brain. We made up that it was so impossible. The girl was screaming at the top of her lungs. She was red. She would not stop pulling her hair, banging her head, and screaming. Within about 5 minutes after providing her that safe and effective remedy to neutralize the effect of that antibiotic in the frontal lobe of her brain, the whole banging the head, pulling the hair, screaming, anxiety, clinging to the mother, the whole disorder stopped. She became sitting right here in front of us. It was like an exorcism, where the child was just sitting up and laughing and now reaching out for us. She wanted to be near us. When before, she was screaming and red and couldn't even breathe and gasping for air, choking on herself because she didn't want anybody near her except her mother. It's pretty incredible. Sometimes the work is very fast, like what I just said, within a few minutes, or sometimes it's going to be a gradual improvement over the course of days or weeks, or maybe a few months. Just depends on how many pieces of the puzzle there are in one child's brain or one young adult or adult's brain compared to another. Whether you're not even 10 years old, whether you're a teenager, you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or 50s or so, it doesn't matter the age. When you've had a slow learning problem and you have a focus and retention problem and a communication problem, when we can find those, even in an adult, find the infections and chemicals that made it happen from childhood on, get rid of those deeply rooted different hidden infections and toxins from your brain and your body, like we did for Johnny here, you can improve too. You have a highly likely chance of improving. Okay? Download my book. I look forward to helping you. One more point I'm going to make. Well, 2 points I want to say. Insurance, unfortunately, does not recognize the type of work that I'm offering. Fortunately, we can do this work for you and help you and or your loved one get better. Unfortunately, insurance doesn't recognize it. So this will be an investment in yourself. You go onto my website on my frequently asked question page. There's a lot of discussion about that I share with you. There's examples and there are the prices of our exam process and treatment is listed right there, very transparent on the website, okay? And one more point I'm going to make is that while I want everybody immediately to start getting better, I want every person to get better. If it only takes one treatment, that's what it's all about. That's all. Because the sooner you're better or your loved one is better, it's better for me, it's better for you, and it's better for everybody in the world who's suffering with a slow learning problem. And there's millions of people around this world who are suffering with slow learning disorders. Why is it better that you get better faster? Because it's the sooner I could share your story, like Johnny's sharing with you, sooner I get to share your story with the world too, okay? The more proof, the more evidence, the easier it is to help a person understand that there's a chance that they can actually overcome their learning disorder or their cognitive impairment. All right? So the sooner you're better, the better it is for me, you, and everybody else out there. So that's what we're in it for, the most rapid recovery that can happen. So what I want to share with you is that, and there's a last point I'll make before I say goodbye here, is that your brain and your body is a puzzle to me. It's a puzzle to you. It's a puzzle, obviously, to every other physician you've been to who haven't helped you, or maybe there was a little bit of help, but you plateaued and you can't get beyond it with their method of treatment, the method of therapy. Understand, if we look at your brain and your body and the complexity of this brain problem, slow learning problem with you, it's like a puzzle, like a Statue of Liberty puzzle you went to a hobby store to pick up, and you see there's 2 puzzle boxes for the Statue of Liberty that you want to put together, the puzzle pieces to make a picture that you could frame and put on the wall. Both puzzle boxes, made by 2 different companies, both have the identical picture. They're both the same size when they're complete. The ABC puzzle company, it's going to be a 3-foot by 5-foot picture of the Statue of Liberty that you could frame and put on your wall. It only takes 10 really big pieces that you put together to complete the 3-foot by 5-foot puzzle of the Statue of Liberty. The XYZ company has 500 pieces that you have to put together to finalize the picture, that puzzle, and create the picture of the 3-foot by 5-foot. Same as the ABC company, that's only 10, but this is 500 pieces. Your brain, or your child's brain, or your friend or loved one's brain may have only one piece. It could be like one chemical, like the antibiotic in the brain. Immediate improvement in function right here in front of our eyes. You might have multiple different infections and toxins that have gotten into different parts of your brain, and it may take us 2, 3, or 4 visits in order to see the great improvement that can happen with you. Understand, your puzzle is different than every other person, even if you're categorized the same with the same diagnosis that the school looks at or insurance policies look at when they say there's a brain fog or there's a dyslexia or a slow learning problem, or the child just has ADD or ADHD and doesn't pay attention, can't focus. So again, diagnosis can be the same, but the causes may be different, or there may be the similar. If one child has 5 and the other one has the same 5, but the second child has 10 more reasons why they're suffering in addition to the same 5 as the other child. Okay, so like the epidurals in the brain of child A, epidurals in the brain of child B, but child B also has the influenza virus, the Epstein-Barr virus, and mold, and child A only has the epidural that's holding their brain back. It's possible. All right, I look forward to helping you and or your loved one. See you soon. Hi, I'm Dr. Lonnie Herman. I'm with a great patient. This is Mr. Garcia. He had come to my clinic back in 2016 and 2017 to help himself overcome a lifetime of brain fog, a lifetime of his brain just not really working as good as he really wanted it to and hoped it to. So, Mr. Garcia, I'm glad that you're here and you can share with me, share with the world what we've been able to help you accomplish and achieve. And so thank you for being on this call today. One of the main reasons why you came to me, again, was because of that terrible brain fog, right? You couldn't think clear, couldn't remember. Can you describe it at all? What it was like for years?
Yeah, I remember before I came to you, I was dealing with brain fog. I was very fatigued. My knees were even hurting. Like I don't know what it was, but I just wasn't in the best condition. I was very down, and I remember when I was searching for like holistic doctors. I remember I came upon two doctors that I was interested. One was with you, and then another one. He lived in Chicago, and then I remember I was like, I think I'm gonna trust the one in Chicago because I was living in Florida. But I was like, it's too far away. Maybe let me just go to the closest. So I came to you. I think that was like the best decision of my life because you really did help me, and you helped me get rid of a lot of things that was wrong with me, and it worked, and till today I can say that I'm still feeling like that last treatment that I walked away when I ended that last treatment that you gave me. But I've heard you can do better, so I want to go back. So, but yeah, I'm grateful for your help.
Thank you. I'm glad that we've been able to do it together. And this is now June 24th of 2022 that we're speaking today. And the last time I saw you was in 2017. So we're talking about 5 years ago was the last time you came here. 4.5, 5 years ago was the last time you came here. And
Yeah,
so, number one, the level of improvement you've sustained all this time, right? So we haven't done another treatment and you still feel just as good as
yeah,
from the last treatment, right? That was a true statement.
yeah. That's if you add up all those days, it's been 5 years. I'm not gonna lie, like, but when I did my last treatment, yeah, that I went back to you. Remember, like how we were talking earlier, like July of 2017 was my last treatment that I went. That lasted like 2 months. After that, I guess I was so excited that I was feeling good. I unfortunately I did not continue going, but it did leave a lasting. Uh, I mean, whatever was in me, you helped me get it out, and it's I'm still sustaining,
The improvement.
yeah, the improvement, and I'm grateful to you and your staff.
Thank you. Can we share a little bit about your history, if you're willing to do that, with people who are listening here so they know just why you're so grateful and what the difference is now compared to then? Are you okay with just a little bit? We don't have to get into the greatest detail, but
Okay.
you had challenges in school, you had challenges with jobs, correct?
Yeah, I was like, I guess when I was growing up, like I had supposedly like ADHD. I had trouble in school. I was antisocial. I was lethargic. I had brain fog. I was always sleepy. I never had energy. But when I came to you, you had a game plan, if you can say, of changing my diet, treatments that you did. I mean,
The diet was only a fraction. I mean, the other things that we did with these formulas, with these quantum energized formulas, the remedies, as you called it, those were the key.
yeah.
Let
So
me, I'm sorry to interrupt. Let me ask you, with your lethargy, with your uh, uh, antisocial, you weren't anti, I'm sorry, you were just like not social. You're not anti
yeah,
people, not anti groups of people. You were just somebody who was just not social. You were
yeah,
quiet, but your focus problem in school was so terrible, not because you didn't want to focus, but because you couldn't get your brain to focus, right?
yeah. That's actually correct.
Hard
Cause
to concentrate, hard to think of what the teachers were saying, reading.
yeah,
What was it like for you? I mean, I think if I remember correctly, you unfortunately, because the schools didn't know what to do for you, nobody knew what was going on with you to help you improve. So this is not your fault. It's not your fault. Um, you were left back, right? There were
yeah.
just grades in school. You couldn't pass classes.
I couldn't. I actually got when I was in high school. I repeated the ninth grade, uh, 4 years in a row.
4 times. And
Yeah,
now you giggled and you laughed, and it's nice to see a
yeah,
smile. Unfortunately, that happened to you, but when we
yeah,
yeah, so now you're able to laugh because now your brain is like a big deal. It's like
yeah,
hey, right? Your brain feels you
yeah.
told
It um before I wasn't able to keep a job. I've been on my job almost 3 years now. Before that, before I saw you, I was just, to me, like 4 months in a job was like the most that I can sustain a job.
Yeah.
That was because I guess it was hard for me to focus. I was always lethargic. I couldn't, when it came to like working in high stressful places where everybody was fast paced. I was always the one behind, and I would be frustrated and lash out at people. But then when I came to you, I did my treatment. I sustained jobs. Before I didn't have that option to say, oh, I don't like this job, I'm gonna go to the next. It was more like, please, I have to survive in this job before I get fired or whatnot. But now I can say I don't like this job. I can perform on better, or at my next job. I have that option of feeling happy, of sustaining a job now. Like you said, I guess I wasn't antisocial, but I'm more social. I'm not lethargic anymore, and the diet that you gave me at that time, I've still sustained it to the best that I can. It's been working for me, and
Can I ask you a question?
yeah.
Answer a question. The first day that you came and met me in my clinic, and you came here because, I mean, we spoke on the phone briefly for a moment, and you said, well, you think you'd give this a try because I was closer to you than the other doctor in Chicago. And when you sat in front of me in my clinic here, across the desk from me, I asked you a question. And that question was something to the effect, what if you could achieve dreams, right? What if you could reach goals, or what would you want to be? What would you want to do with your life? And your response was, do you remember?
Oh yeah, I said that. Yeah, because like I was telling you earlier, I thought of like those were one of the questions, like to reel your people in, like a sales gimmick or whatnot. But I remember saying, when you asked me what would you want to be, or like what are your dreams, and I said to you, I can't even think about even dreaming of becoming anything, because I'm just fighting to survive. I'm just fighting just to be normal, just to sustain a job. So if I can't even do that, how can I dream?
And
So that,
you were in a lot of tears because it was so, you felt the pain for so many years, all throughout your
yeah,
whole life, from school. You couldn't, I'm just letting people know, it was so bad for you because your brain was so brain fogged. You had failed classes so many times, you lost jobs so many times. Your brain function was so, at that time, so bad.
yeah,
And again, not your fault. And you were trying, but there was something there blocking your brain from its ability of being able to retain information, to even put
yeah,
numbers together in math, to read and remember. And it was so very difficult for you. So when I asked you that, you broke down and you said, don't even ask me that, because I can't even, there's no way I could dream, right? Because I can't even
yeah,
survive. I can't even think. I can't even keep my head clear. And
yeah.
so,
And it's crazy because you're bringing me back to that moment, and it was emotional for me. And but now, like, with your help, I've been able to think bigger, if you can say. But yeah,
to think
it's
clearer.
yeah, think clearer.
And for you to
And
have a job right now that you said you're working for the government here in the United States,
yeah,
government for
so it's,
3 years,
it's like a city job that I have.
that's a huge
And
accomplishment.
yes, so I
And
mean,
even right now, be in conversation with you, because it was tough to have a conversation with you in the past.
yeah, right
Different.
now I'm just emotional because it's bringing me back
Yeah.
to those days that I felt bad,
Yeah.
and I didn't think that I can have a regular life,
Yeah.
a regular life.
Mhm.
But I was grateful that at that time, I remember I moved to Florida because I was so depressed living in New York. I didn't have nothing going for me. I left New York in 2015 to Florida. Florida, I was just a lost person. Like, I was like, what am I doing here? I was just looking for answers, and thankfully I came across to your videos, you and the other doctor I was saying, but I guess I made the right choice. It was like you flip a coin, like which doctor you're gonna go, and I guess I got the good one, and I got you, so it was good.
I appreciate you coming on this call and sharing this with everybody. Is there anything that you would like to share with people who are watching this, besides everything that you've been so generous and shared everything already so far? Is there anything you want to tell them if they think maybe it's too good to be true? Maybe it worked for him, but it couldn't work for them. I mean, is there anything, because they don't know what we were talking about before, they can't understand unless they do it, right? Remember that when you're talking about even your family. So is there anything else that you want to share that you could tell them, just like how different and effective it's been?
Like if they ever find themselves in a situation where if they're skeptical about it, or if they're thinking about it twice, and they're sitting on a chair looking at their laptop or looking at their phone, and they're trying to make that decision at that moment, that it's processing in their head, whatever it is that they're going through in life, whatever it is that they're thinking that they may go through because of what they're going through at that present moment. I think that it is their responsibility as their own person to give themselves that chance to take the next step into the unknown. Because when I went to you, it was unknown, and I feel that because like regular healthcare system is like really is all about the same recycled treatments, but your treatment was, when I went to your treatment, it was kind of like skeptical. I was like, but then I saw results instantly, and I feel that people should give themselves that opportunity because they deserve it, because they need to know that they have a chance to live up to their potential.
Congratulations. Quickly. Do hope I get to see you again sometime in the next year. Yeah, I want to thank you for getting on this call and sharing your experience with the world. I really appreciate it. Now it's 5 years later and you're still doing great. So that's awesome. And
I'm going to take a vacation to Florida. I'm going to stop by.
Yeah. When you see the improvements, when you see what I told you before about the new strategies, it's awesome.